Today's date is June 15th, 2025. And as I said, I've been, today's topic of today's message is God's rule shall come. It's appropriate, it's Father's Day. My son didn't start. You know, such a beautiful music, you know, because I was kind of on the hard side of being a dad, as David would readily attest. So it's, and I never had a daughter until now. So it's pretty cool, beautiful music. Well, anyway, I didn't want to do fluff. I'm watching what's going on in the world. I'm looking what's going on in our country. And we have a great divide. And we had a lot of protests, and these are going to continue all throughout the summer. They're all planned. Nothing's by accident. Everything is orchestrated. Everything is funded. People go around with masks, with $1,000 masks on their face. $1,000. The bricks are all in place. They've been deposited in all the cities. The left is even assassinating political leaders. 2 died in Minnesota. Former Speaker of the House of the House of Representatives in the state of Minnesota was assassinated yesterday, early Saturday morning in the wee hours, and then 2 others were shot. These were all Democrats that had broken from the party. And the main suspect is an appointee of the radical governor, and there's a manhunt going on. Things are just crazy. Israel attacks Iran. Russia is surprisingly quiet. I don't know if you noticed. Surprisingly. And this is going to tie in with the message, because what I did is I went back through Daniel chapter 8, because for many years I get flummoxed by chapters 2, 7, and 8 of the book of Daniel, because they give he gives images of beasts and kingdoms and gold and silver and brass, and then lions and leopards and all kinds of things. Then you get he-goats and rams, and you try to make sense of it all. And the whole world is chaotic, even though we had a wonderful parade yesterday in Washington, D.C., and thank God that went off without a hitch, and nobody got hurt. There were no bombs set or anything like that. But I got to thinking, so what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to ask for your indulgence, because this is something that I don't really expect you to understand, and this is not teaching you the intricacies of Daniel, because I'm still working on it after over 50 times through the Bible, and you may think that I've said something wrong, or I didn't get something quite right, because a lot of people have opinions about the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation. Well, this means that, and that means this. But what I did find in Daniel chapter 8 is I found a picture of what's going on between Israel and Iran that is literally shocking. And it's so shocking that it shows just how, once again, how close we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Daniel chapter 8, first 12 verses, and then verses 20 to 25. And I'm going to give a little background on it. And then it's going to be a commentary. And as you see on your notes, if you did get the notes, is there's the verses that will be spoken in verses 1 to 6 in Daniel chapter 8, you can see, and so forth and so on. There's no real outline per se. So, Daniel chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw, that I was at Shushan in the palace which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had the two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler, that's extreme anger, against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them, out of these 4 horns, 4 notable ones, there came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. That would be Israel. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself, even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Now we're going to jump over to verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. The rough goat is the king of Grecia. That's a transliteration for Greece. The great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time, that's now, of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding and dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut up thou the vision, for it shall be for many days. You go, whoa, what the heck is he talking about? Well, Daniel chapter 8, the overview is, this is the coming of the Antichrist. It's going to be the notable horn that's going to stand up. And what it dovetails is the current chaos that is going on in the world. Because for the Lord to bring to pass the tribulation that's coming, to deal with Israel for one last time and make right all things so Jesus can rule for 1,000 years from Jerusalem, which is the main point of the Bible, you have to have a setting up of kingdoms for Christ's return so Christ can reign for the 1,000 years. So everything you're seeing, all the chaos that's going on, is the setup for what's coming. Nothing is by accident, and the players aren't by accident. And they're all written about over 500 years before Christ shows up. Blows your mind. Now, the main view of the Bible is premillennial. In other words, Jesus comes back before the millennium. That's what premillennium is. And when he comes back, it's going to be very simple. This world, prior to his coming back, is going to wax worse and worse. It's just going to be. It has to happen. things can't stay the same for the Bible to play itself out. And all the players of the world that you're seeing right now, even though maybe you're not into geography or world history or whatever, but it's all happening right now. In fact, the amount of material that you find in Revelation, Psalms, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Job, you're going to find tremendous amount of information about the tribulation, because after the 7 years of the tribulation, Jesus returns. And when he returns, it's going to be a whole lot different. The whole world's going to be different, and you are going to be sons of God, ruling and reigning with him. And it's close. Now, in Revelation chapter 1, verse 7, John the Revelator writes, "Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him," that's Israel, "and all the kindred of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen." Amen. Jesus is going to set up a literal physical kingdom, and he's going to rule in person as a literal physical king. All the shenanigans that you see that are going on right now are going to cease. There will be no Putin. There will be no Trump. There will be no mullahs in Iran. There will be no Netanyahu in Israel. Everybody's going to be subjugated. It's going to be King Jesus. And when he comes, he's going to obliterate every religious, political, education, and scientific sphere of influence in the world. We're all going to be subject to King Jesus. Hence, God's rule shall come. There won't be any more chaos. This is going to be a pretty good place to live.
Amen.
Even for the people that make it through. Especially for them. And we are going to rule and reign with them. Now, as I mentioned before, there are 3 chapters in Daniel, and I'm not going to go into all 3. And they are chapter 2, chapter 7, and chapter 8. And they're very interesting because a lot of people think they're all talking about the same thing. And a lot of times I forget, having not gone through and done a review, but what today, the weekend's events, really jarred me, because the one thing that stood out that just blew my mind was that Russia has been sitting out while Iran is getting pummeled. I mean, they are getting pounded. To have 8/10 of your government wiped out in one night, 8 out of 10 mullahs wiped out in one night, and Russia has been Iran's main benefactor for decades against Israel. Why are they sitting? What's going on? Everybody said they had nukes. Everybody said that if we hit Iran, Israel's going to get nukes. No nukes. Lots of missiles, but no nukes. And over the last 4 years, and unfortunately, a lot of people in this country have not been paying attention, but a lot of Iranian terrorist cells have come across the southern border. And they've got some nasty stuff. Maybe, maybe not. And so all this stuff is going on, and I'm sitting there and I'm dreading, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Trump, put your foot on Netanyahu's chest and tell him to knock it off. What are you doing? You're going to blow the whole place up? Well, Netanyahu said, I'm going to go nail him anyway. And he did. Boy, did they ever. They've been smuggling in drones and bombs and with their spies and everything. I mean, the Iranians never even saw it coming. I mean, they flattened it. I'm going to get ahead of myself, and I don't want to. So, this is what caused me, and I'm going back and I'm thinking, Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2 has 4 kingdoms. There's a gold kingdom, a silver kingdom, a brass kingdom, and an iron kingdom. 4 kingdoms. And what's really interesting about these kingdoms, and come to Bible study, we'll go through over them again, because you'll get once you begin to get acclimated, you realize that God is in control of everything that's going on, all the way down to Deanna being in a coffee shop on Saturday or whatever, and feeling really uneasy about all the goofballs that are running around. And they're not goofballs, they're evil, they're being paid. Most of them are being paid $200 a day to do the riding, the Antifa. God's in control. Well, there are 4 kingdoms in chapter 2, and they all occur historically before Jesus comes. And there's 4 of them, and it's Babylon, it's Persia, it's Greece, and it's Rome. But then, when you get down to the feet, that's still in play to now. So you have 4 kingdoms prophesied who take place before the first advent, and then there's a gap of thousands of years, and now it's going to come into play now, and it's going to become an Antichrist kingdom, and then a second advent. Now, if you go to chapter 7, you see that now, instead of kingdoms, it talks about 4 beasts. 3 beasts, excuse me. 3 beasts. And they are a lion, a bear, and a leopard. And what's really interesting is, if you think about it, they have not occurred until the 1800s. Because in the 1800s, the lion appeared, and that's the British Empire. And as the British Empire was crumbling after the First World War, they sent their leftists to Russia, overtook Russia, and Russia became a power. That's your bear. How do you know that, Bob? Well, in chapter 7, if you look at the 3 beasts, you'll find one of the beasts, the bear. What does he have in his mouth? 3 ribs. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they're considered the 3 ribs. And that happened in the last century, the 20th century. And then lastly, the leopard, the 3-colored one, he's black, white, and he's got yellow. That's America. And so the 3 are prophesied before 500 years before Christ, but they don't come to pass until the 1800s, 1900s, and today. And if you go to Revelation 13:2, what do you find the Antichrist beast is? You go to the 13th chapter and verse 2, after you just got out of Daniel chapter 7, and you find a leopard. A leopard. But you don't find a bear. You find a leopard and you find the feet of a bear. Not only that, the beast is a leopard and he's got the feet of a bear, but he's got the mouth of a lion, which means he speaks English. Oh, because that's the crown of Britain. Now, and out of that comes the Antichrist. Antichrist tribulation, second coming. So, in Daniel chapter 2, you have 4 kingdoms. Then there's a 2,000 plus year gap. And now you go from the head down to the legs. That's your 4. And then you go to your feet. That's your 5th. And that is now. That's Rome. America. Rome. America. America is a Roman country. We have a Roman type of government. We speak a language that's based on Latin. We have a Roman system of alphabet. And we have a Roman numeral system. Rome, 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 Rome. And I learned over the weekend that many of the Romans, when the Roman Empire fell, we're not talking the Italian Romans. See, contrary to what a lot of people think, Rome was controlled by Germans. They went down to Rome, they took over Rome, and the Italians fought for them. When they were conquered by the Visigoths and all the Goths, and they all came down, they split out of Dodge, And where did they go? They went to Scotland. And they formed the basis of the Anglo-Saxon that produced the British Empire that took over the whole world. You see, Satan's got his hands in everything. It's all going around, and everybody's sitting. And you got, the world wars, and everybody's going off to fight in the trenches. Or in the Second World War, they're fighting here, they're fighting there, there's backstabbings going on. It's Satan taking all these people groups that are found in antiquity, and they're here today, genetically speaking, and they're still doing the same thing. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So, Daniel 2's got 4 kingdoms, a gap, and then the Antichrist kingdom, second coming. Daniel 7 has 3 beasts, and now you have a gap there's a long gap because they just came in recently, and now what you have is you have the beast empire is now forming, and I hate to say it, but we're at the center of it. I wish it weren't true, but it is. And you're going to have a second coming. Now, what makes Daniel chapter 8 really amazing is that there are 2 kingdoms in Daniel chapter 8. And they are the Medes and the Persians and the Greeks. And you go, what have the Greeks got to do with anything? Well, the Greeks happen to have a language that's very similar to Russian. Their language is similar, and their alphabet is similar. And so what you have here is, and this is what we're going to go through, you have in Daniel chapter 2, you have 4 kingdoms before the first coming, a gap, the satanic kingdom, and the second coming. Daniel chapter 7, you have 3 beasts who show up in our time, and now, so there's a gap all the way to that, and now it's going to form into one beast empire, which is Satan running the whole show in the second coming. And now in Daniel chapter 8, the Lord is showing that there's going to be 2 kingdoms that are going to show up before the first advent, before Jesus comes the first time, the Medes and the Persians, and that's this crowd right here, Medes and the Persians. And then the Greeks are going to crush the Medes and the Persians. And because it's already happened, and they're now happening right today in type, there's another gap, and again you have a satanic kingdom, and it's going to bring in the tribulation. You see how they all go together? They're just boom, 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 boom. And this weekend exposed it all for me. So, I'm going to take you through, and I hope I can show you that what's going on here. So I'm going to go through Daniel chapter 8, 1 through 12, and then 20 to 25. All right, Daniel chapter 8, verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, which appeared unto me at the first. Do you know who Belshazzar is? He's the last Babylonian king. Persia's not even there yet. You have to understand in chapter 8 that Persia hasn't even come to power. Everything is being run by Babylon right here. And old Nebuchadnezzar's power, his kingdom, has been crumbling, and the Medes and the Persians are now coming to the forefront. And in Daniel chapter 5, this Belshazzar gets killed when Darius the Mede conquers Babylon. So Daniel sees the vision in the 3rd year, and it looks like he has about 5 or 7 years of his reign. Chapter 7, I believe, is in the 1st year of his reign. Now, Daniel gets a vision. He sees in the vision, verse 2, and it came to pass when I saw, where is Daniel when he sees this vision? He's in Shushan. Where's he at? Well, he's in Iran. So before he gets caught in Babylon in chapter 5 of Daniel, they're not in chronological order, the chapters, he's over here and he sees a vision by the river Ulai. I'm not sure where that is. And he's in the province of Elam, and Elam is your Iran. It's Iran. Good old Iran, where all the crazy mullahs are, who have been fighting the Iraqis and fighting Israel and creating terror all over the world. Elam, Iran. And here's old Daniel. Let's see, he's 500 years before Christ, so he's 2,500 years ago. God is prompting him to write about Iran. He says in verse 3, "Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram." Well, here is a salient point. We don't have to figure out who the ram is. The Bible tells us. Go to verse 20. Same chapter. We won't be going through 20 to 25. They're the explanatory for verses 1 to 12. "The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia." And in fact, in Daniel chapter 5, when after you get the handwriting on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, who comes in but Darius the Mede? Now let's go back to Daniel chapter 8. "I saw a ram," so that's the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, two horns. One is the Medes, the other is the Persians. "And the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last." So Darius conquers Babylon, the Mede, but eventually he gets pushed out by the Persians. And it becomes not a Mede-Persian empire, it becomes an Iranian-Persian empire. Now, and the higher came up last. That would be Persian. Verse 4. Now, the thing I put Ecclesiastes 1:9 there is that it's a biblical principle that the thing that has been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. There's no new thing under the sun. So when you're talking in Daniel chapter 8 and you're going through and you're looking at this and it tells you the Medes and the Persians, it's giving you history in advance, because what's going to happen is these two kingdoms that he's talking about are going to occur before the first advent, but the material that's in them played out this weekend with the attack by Israel, the Pleasant Land, on the Persians, the Iranians. Now, notice there are two horns, Medes, Persian, okay? And so, if you, and it also, I want to show you that if you go to Revelation 17, that's the woman that rides the beast, I want to show you how the Bible interprets the Bible. If you go to Revelation 17, and you're perusing it, you get to, and you read about this woman that rides the beast, and you go to the last verse in the chapter, you see the woman which thou sawest is that great city that reigneth over the kings of the earth. Now, the woman is in verse 3. "I saw a woman upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And she is the great city." That's verse 9. "The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth." That's Rome. The Vatican sits on 7 hills. And not only that, they reign over the kings of the earth. If you look at verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. That signifies power. "Decked with golden stones, having a golden cup." And this is what Rome has been doing. She's been reigning over the world for 2,000 years through the use of religious. In other words, if you're not part of Rome, you can't go to heaven. say. If you're not a Roman Catholic, you're lost, you're going to hell, according to Roman Catholics. But, we Bible believers know that it's a cursed cosmos. In other words, someone can tell you, you're going to hell. I can't go to hell. I can't go to hell. Sorry. You can tell me I'm going to hell. You can hate my guts, but you can't, but you're a cursed cosmos. See how it works? And then over the kings of the earth, which shows it's a political. Now, go back to chapter 8. And the higher one comes up last, and that is Persia. Now, in verse 5, we read, "And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth." A he-goat. Do you know what the satanic symbols are today of Satan? A goat? A he-goat? The pentagram? The five-sided? Yeah. Baphomet? Yeah, the he-goat. That's interesting. I was considering, behold, a he-goat came up from the west upon the face of the whole earth. Now, right now, if you go to verse 21, and here it's called the rough goat, the he-goat, the rough goat, that makes it more satanic, is what? He's the king of Greece. And contrary to popular opinion, it's not Philip of Macedonia, it's Alexander the Great. Now, we continue on. The he-goat came from the west, on the face of the whole earth, touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. A notable horn between his eyes. Now, in the past, Persia, which now is the ram with the horn, they get the higher horn, is now controlling everything. Takes over the Babylonians, and then Alexander the Great leads an army across here and smashes into the ram. He came to the ram that had two horns. I'm going to go back to the notable horn between his eyes, which I had seen standing before the river, and he ran unto him in the fury of his power. If you go into ancient history, you'll find that the Greeks, under Alexander the Great, just literally smashed the dickens out of the Persians. I mean, it was brutal. And I saw him, the goat, come close to the ram, Persia, and he was moved with choler. That means extreme anger and hatred, and smote the ram and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So Persia's gone. Persia's wiped out. Alexander the Great comes in and he takes this whole thing over. Now this guy is quite a peach. He's an epileptic. He's insane. He has bouts of drunken madness, and the Greeks are fighting among themselves, and eventually he dies, and he was so gnarly that they left his body for 2 days and wouldn't even touch it after he died. He was so awful. And he was clearly a type of the Antichrist, because he ruled the whole world. Now, remember back in verse 5, there was a notable horn between his eyes? Well, let's find out who the notable horn is. Therefore, verse 8, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. That's Alexander dying in a drunken rage of epilepsy, and he croaks. He assumes room temperature, and he's dead. And for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. Now this is where it gets really interesting. The four horns, if you go to, where is it here? The four horns turn out to be his four generals that take over the empire. They're the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, and two others. And what they do is they divide the known world back then, this is all this, into four sections. First, Greece, that's Philip of Macedonia. Then you have Turkey, which is called Asia Minor. And then you have Egypt, and you have the Pleasant Land, and all of this. Now, what is really wild about this is one of these generals is the notable horn between his eyes. But this horn is not a human thing. Because if you go to verse 9, you find that one of them came forth a little horn, and he waxed exceeding great towards the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. In other words, this fourth horn has control over Palestine. I guess I moved ahead, didn't I? Now, I want to go back to verse 6 and just tell you. In verse 6, and he came to the ram that had the two horns. You have to understand that Alexander's not even born yet. When Daniel goes in and gets this vision, this is all before the Medes and the Persians. This is all before the Greeks. This is all before the Romans. This is several years. God is putting a vision into Daniel that he's seeing something that's coming that hasn't occurred yet. Belshazzar was slain by Darius the Median, and that's back in chapter 5. So, the he-goat in verse 8 waxed very great, that's Alexander, becomes a world power, and then the great horn was broken, that's the first king, Alexander, and he dies, and now you've got one king down, four kings up. You got Greece, Syria, Asia Minor, and Egypt. Those are the kingdoms of the Greeks, the four generals. Now, out of them, that's the four winds of heaven. Four winds of heaven are Greece, right there, Asia Minor, or this is the Israel here, which is, this whole thing is Asia Minor, because Asia goes all the way over to here. And see, this is where I got confused when I was making this up. The four are Greece, Syria, Turkey, and Egypt. Okay? Greece, Syria, which includes Palestine, Turkey, and Egypt. Now, this is what makes what's going on today so insane. Because when you go to verse 9, you see out of one of them comes forth the little horn. Now, in Isaiah 31:8, you find the term the Assyrian. You don't have to go there. The term in the book of Isaiah, the Assyrian, is used 7 times, and out of the 7, 6 directly refer to the Antichrist. So, we know from Genesis that the Antichrist comes from Israel, from the tribe of Dan. But out of this region called Syria, which is one of the 4, comes the Antichrist, and that is the little horn. And that is future, and the way you know it's future is because when you go to this little horn who moves towards Israel, the pleasant land, because in verse 10, what happens is it shows you that this is not a human per se man. Try to explain this. Because the little horn waxes great even to the host of heaven. In other words, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. So what chapter 8 did was, it went from antiquity to the Medes and the Persians. The Persians come out on top. Then Alexander the Great leads a big army, flattens the Persians. Then he takes up, he has 4 sections. And by the way, Egypt, you know what the main city in Egypt is? Alexandria. Guess where all the Bible translations come from that distort the Bible today? Alexandria. Bears his name. See, he's the type of the Antichrist. Now, what they say, what the text says, is that Alexander dies, his 4 generals come up, and then out of one of them comes the little horn, and he, because Isaiah shows that he's the Assyrian, which is here, Syria is up here, and he's going to move toward the pleasant land. That's your Antichrist. Now, the text then switches and goes to heaven. It says right there, it waxed great even to the host of heaven. Now that takes you to Revelation 12, and I do want you to go to Revelation 12. Daniel talks about the little horn that waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land, Israel, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven. Look what happens in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 3. There appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. The stars, the host of heaven, the stars, did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now notice too in verse 9, the great dragon that was cast out, that old serpent called Devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, was cast out into the earth. I go back to Daniel chapter 8. It waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. The Antichrist is now somewhere here because Israel is attacking Iran and something's going on with Russia. And nothing's making any sense because Iran was supposed to have nuclear-tipped weapons that was going to obliterate Israel and did not. They didn't. Now, so spiritually what we see is Satan is involved in what's going on. Now, when you go to 11, we find that we have he, that's the little horn. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host. So he is the Antichrist. The prince of hosts is Satan. You see, it transfers from Satan to heaven. He's cast down, and now he indwells the Antichrist, who is the devil, John chapter 6, even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. So, if you go back to Daniel 2, you got 4 kingdoms, a break, and then an Antichrist kingdom. Daniel 7, you got 3 kingdoms, a break, you got a tribulation kingdom. And in Daniel 8, you have 2 kingdoms in antiquity, but they're right now, because what you just saw happen in Iran could only happen with the America's tacit approval. It came out over the weekend that Trump knew about the attack and didn't stop it. Israel's trying to get us to go into the war. Right now, we're not. You say, that doesn't make any sense, Bob. It's all about what's going on in Russia up here, because Russia is a type of Greece. Remember, when the Antichrist shows up in Revelation 13, he's going to be a leopard, and he's going to have the feet of a bear. What's happening with America and Russia today? We're going to be partners. We're going to trade. We're going to solve the Ukraine war. It's going to end. What's been going on? They speak with the mouth of a lion. Who does that represent? That's your European Union and London. Because that's who's fomenting the war in Ukraine. They're the power behind Zelensky. So they have, for 4 years, been tormenting Russia. Russia has said enough in 2022. They invaded Ukraine. And what we have today is this. Russia is basically holding themselves back while England is attacking all the bases throughout Russia's southern border. America is giving permission to Israel to attack the Iranians, and the Iranians are not ruled by Iranians, they're ruled by descendants of Muhammad. You know what I also learned over the weekend? All the mullahs in Iran are genetic clones of Muhammad. You can't be a mullah unless you are genetically a son of Muhammad. So everything is involved. The little horn, which is coming out, which then goes up and brings down the stars, Los Angeles, it's the city of the angels. And who resides in Los Angeles? The stars. Oh. You see how it's all tied together? It's all tied together. Now, I can see in your faces, because I probably laid too much on you. But look at verse 11. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him. So the Antichrist magnified himself to Satan, the prince of the host, and by him, the Antichrist, the sacrifice was taken away. Have you heard what Netanyahu has announced? They're destabling Iran to kick out the mullahs so they can blow up the mosque on Jerusalem. And with all the rockets raining down on Jerusalem and on Tel Aviv and Israel, oh, the Iranians, they blew up the mosque. So if the mosque disappears, you've got one more link into what's going on. That's where I came up with the title, God's Rule Shall Come. Because it doesn't look like he's ruling anything. This world is insane right now. It's crazy. And I'm looking at some And you're like going, what the heck are you talking about, Bob? I don't hear any of this stuff. It's happening. And it's right there, right in front of our eyes. Because if they put up the temple, they're going to do what? They're going to bring back the sacrifice, and then the Antichrist is going to take away the sacrifice. You see how close it is? It is so close you can almost taste it. Now, I could see, the fact that I honestly didn't think I was going to get to preach this morning. Way I was looking at that Iran thing when Israel hit them and they took out 8 out of 10 of the mullahs and their generals, I thought, uh-oh, they're going to lob a nuke. Do you know that Israel has over 10,000 nuclear bombs in their possession? They're crazy. You ever heard of the Samson option? No? What did Samson do in Judges 13? He pulled the building down upon himself and killed all the Philistines. Do you know what the core doctrine of Israel is? They're going to blow the whole world up. If they think they're going down, and they already got it, and they've got nukes all over the world, how do you think they took down Iran so quick over the weekend? Wow. They infiltrated them. It's been months in preparation. They had drones. They were taking them in and assembling them in Tehran and around. So when the order came, there was chaos all over the country. These guys are, I do not support this in any way, shape, or form. I can't believe how crazy these people are. But in my panic, I realized there's something more going on, because in all the chaos, God's rule is still going to come to pass. And He has to make the chaos, and He has to bring the players. In Revelation 11:1, you find in the verse, there's a temple of God, there's an altar, and there's worship. The temple's got to come back to Jerusalem. Netanyahu has said they got it and they're going to blow the mosque up. He made it in a small speech that the media doesn't, but it's out there. You can see it. They're going to do it. And it's like the 4 Democrats that got shot in Minnesota. They were going against the Democrat Party. So what did the Democrats do? They tried to assassinate him and got 2 of them. That's what's going on in Minnesota. You see, when you want something bad to happen, you make it look like the other guy did it. And you do it to yourself. And again, I put Matthew 24:15. That's the abomination of desolation. And there's your Antichrist. So, the Antichrist is going to get a host, was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of the transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So what we're going to see come out of all this is we're going to see the Antichrist is going to begin to move, and move by moving the parts. Now, we go to... Now, I put Romans 13 and Romans 9 because I wanted to show you that first of all, Romans 13, there's all power comes from God. Even Obama was ordained by God. I hate to tell you, that was a bitter pill for me to swallow, but it's true. Do you wonder how all the major players are not getting arrested in our country? It's because God is allowing them to go free to continue to do their dastardly acts. They're literally calling for insurrections all through the country as we speak. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. There is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Romans chapter 9, verse 17. Here we go. could pick Trump, Netanyahu, anybody you want, Putin. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, Pharaoh's just the type here. Even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. God has to bring evil in order to get the Antichrist in power. And boy, are they casting down the truth to the earth. So you have to ask yourself, how does the Antichrist get power? Well, in Daniel chapter 24, his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Now, look at the next verse. Through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. He shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace he shall destroy many. This is how evil is coming in. Oh, the Twin Towers fell. Oh, we got to have the Patriot Act to keep us safe. You're being spied on all the time, all the time. And he shall enter in, and he shall, Daniel chapter 11:24, he's going to enter in peaceably. Revelation 12:9, devil and Satan deceives the whole earth, and to cap it off, behold a white horse. That's in Revelation 6:2. So, what I wanted to show you is that Russia is part of the beast empire. Revelation 13. You have a leopard with the feet of a bear. You have the mouth of a lion. That's America, Russia, and the European Union. They will come back together. We'll see that. And they are allowing Israel to bust up Iran because the European Union is trying to subjugate Europe. You think we got a lot of Muslims here? You should see what's happening in Ireland and France and Germany. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And if it weren't enough, the mullahs who are not Persian, not Iranian, but are actually Saudi because they're from the Muhammad line, do you know what they're calling for now? Have you heard? They're calling for the 12th Imam. They got their own Antichrist. Did you know that? In Islam, they got their own second coming of Muhammad. Somewhere they believe that Muhammad's coming back. Just like the Christians have Jesus, so Satan counterfeits, and the mullahs have the 12th Imam. Right now, you have the left in the United States, and they're openly calling for insurrection and overthrow of the government. It's everywhere. If you're not hearing it, it's because you're not paying attention. You're not listening. Maybe you don't want to listen to it. Maybe you think it's just, Bob, there you go again. But I'm telling you, it's all by design. And no matter how you cut it, the world is building toward a catalytic event. Which is the rapture. That's the one thing that's going to tip the whole thing over. So, in Daniel chapter 8:24, by peace he shall destroy many, and he, the Antichrist, shall stand up against the prince of princes. That's Jesus. But, as it says in verse 25, he shall be broken, the Antichrist shall be broken without hand. In Daniel chapter 2, in verse 34, a stone was cut out without hands. Isn't that interesting? And in verse 45, the stone break in pieces the iron, brass, clay, silver, gold, all of Satan's kingdoms, which is what's going on today. And so, I want to conclude with the end of chapter 7. And this Antichrist that's coming, he's probably here now, and he's behind all of this that's going on. I don't believe Trump is bad. I like Trump. But he's not paying attention, and he's being played. And he's being played by really bad people that are trying to do bad things and get us into a war. The trouble is that as much as I detest it, it's got to happen because it's got to bring in the Antichrist kingdom. And so what's going to happen is, in verse 24 of chapter 7, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise. And there will be 10 kings. And another shall arise after them. He shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Hey, have you ever felt worn out lately? Do you feel worn out? Do you feel like every time you look at the news, and it's like, come on, can't you all just get along and we just trade and be friends? What is this? All this craziness. Wear out the saints of the Most High. That's us. And think to change times and law. They still can't get our time change right. That's a personal little beef I have. And they shall be given into his hand until the times and the dividing of times. But the judgment shall sit. You know who the judgment is? Jesus Christ. He's coming back. And they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Well, maybe that's the Antichrist judgment. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. In which conclusion I have, God's rule shall come. And that's where my mind went yesterday, and that's what I wanted to share with you.
Amen.
And, hope you got something out of it, but everything is plain, and it's explaining why so many things don't make sense right now. But it's close. It is so close, it's insane. Insanely close.